Hello, hello.
Hello. Hey, Marino.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How you doing? What's going on?
It's been a long week. I still have like a million and one things to do before I wrap for the day. But
Oh,
you
that's
know what?
tough.
I had to fit the stream in.
I I foolishly, I won't say foolishly. I accepted to teach a private Terraform training in like a week and a half.
Nice.
And because it's a private training, I can't leverage some of the materials I've used before. So I am like in the midst of putting together slide decks and custom labs and stuff for the training. So I'm in the thick of it with that. That's like where my brain is at right now.
I've had to do similar in the past. I understand like building out slides just for training is a lot of work. So hats off to you. Thanks for doing that. But
You
two, I
think
know
AI
like
would make this better, to immediately steer the conversation. Like, I think the problem is I don't have Copilot for 365, so I don't have that option in PowerPoint.
oh, interesting.
I feel like maybe the slide building would be a little easier. Because like I always know what I want on the slide from a conceptual standpoint, like the points I want to make on any given slide. But the thing I always struggle with is layout and graphics and stuff. And maybe that's something Copilot but I think I would have to pony up like an extra $10 or $20 a month for it. Just don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah, that's a lot just for like one little thing you have to do, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe I could just bump it up for a month, see if I like it.
that's what I would do. Like when I wanted to watch something on Netflix or something, I just subscribe for that 1 month, watch the thing like in its entirety, and then all right, see you later.
Oh,
And then I get a
I
message, hey, we can give you a discount. Don't cancel on us.
always I'm not disciplined enough to like commit to watching the whole thing within that month and also remembering to cancel it when I'm done.
Yeah.
So I just have and like because the kids and my partner all watch different streaming things, it's just all always in effect. And I'm like, well, I'm paying twice as much as I ever did for cable.
That's pretty much where we're at with like AI. We're paying like, I don't know, 3 times as much as we normally would for like a single model. I remember like having to try and do stuff with ChatGPT for free, and I just hit my limits, and it's like, all right, fine, I will subscribe. I will get ChatGPT Plus, and it's been great, and great for like just if I want Google on steroids, that's really what it's there for. But if I want something that really helps with the coding, that means, all right, now I'm looking at Claude, and I could use the free model, but then I'll quickly hit my limits anyways.
Yeah.
And then I have to subscribe to something all over again. So they just had me thinking, what if I could just subscribe to a number of APIs and then just like front it with my own system that would just like load balance and then check to see if I have credits left over, and if I don't, then all right, we'll move to the next available model. I mean, there'll be like disclaimers in there saying, well, if you use ChatGPT versus like Anthropic, you're not gonna get a good response, but you'll get like a response or something to that effect.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
It would be fun.
Yeah, maybe we can build that one day.
Maybe.
I mean, they kind of already exist in some ways, but they're just like marketed differently. Like if you think about tools like Windsurf, even VS Code with its ability to switch between the different models with Copilot, that's pretty much there for you. Like it does the thing. But I like having a chat interface, a really clean chat interface that just is so friendly, right? You don't have to think a lot about whether or not it's going to lie to you, especially now.
Well, it's always going to lie to you.
Yeah.
I saw something on LinkedIn pretty recently that was like humans hallucinate just as much as AI does. I don't know if that's entirely true. But maybe it's true. I mean, people do confidently say things that they're not entirely certain of. So that's certainly true. And I'm guilty of that. So I'll be the first one to raise my hand and be like, sometimes I don't know the answer, but I need to know the answer right now. So I'm just going to front.
I've done that too. You know what? Being in the role that I am in now, like sometimes you just kind of have to like go with your gut and assume that it works, and then you go back in the docs and be like, "Oh, it's not supported yet." And it's like, did they just invent a solution to a problem, but the solution doesn't exist yet because they haven't coded it into the software? I mean, it happens.
It does.
But anyways, any plans for Father's Day that you know of?
Oh, my parents are taking me out to brunch, as my wife is going to be at a softball tournament for my middle one, basically the entire day.
Okay.
So my parents are like, "We'll take you out." I'm like, "Oh, it's weird, but okay." I get a free lunch out of it. I can't complain about that. But yeah,
Always fun.
We're so busy. It's like, yeah, I don't. Father's Day is not a big deal for us. What about you?
Mm-hmm. We're just trying to get all the dads together, like myself, my dad, and as well as my wife's dad. And we're just going to, I don't know, maybe try and go out for lunch. Like my wife asked me a couple of days ago, she's like, "Oh, what do you want to do on Sunday?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I see my dad. You should see her dad too." And my sister was like bugging her about like all of us going out for lunch. And the thing is, like, they couldn't figure out where to go. Like they couldn't figure out an ideal spot to take us all out for lunch. So I don't know what's actually happening anymore. We just get a bunch of takeout and hang out at someone's place and chill out, which I'm totally fine with.
Yep, that sounds
as
good
long
to me.
as long as the weather's good, that's all I care about.
Don't have to make it overly complicated.
Yeah, exactly. So, I was thinking today that I'd drive a little bit so that, we can kind of talk about some of the stuff that I've been exploring. So in my world, I deal in a lot of API gateways, a lot of interesting enterprise setups. And the theme nowadays is that these enterprises also want to use that same API gateway capability for their enterprise when they're working with AI. Mainly because they're dealing with things like ShadowAI situations where the developers are effective. They're us. We're basically going outsourcing a key and just like doing things with it. And it's just because it's so easy to go in and swipe your card. You don't even swipe, you're just throwing in like Google Pay or Apple Pay will show up and be like, "Hey, I'll enter in these details for you very easily. You don't have to remember anything."
Yeah.
And so like, I think it's been a bit of a heartburn. Like the last several conversations I've had around this with these end users are saying like, we are going to get burnt by this if we don't wrap governance around it. Now, conveniently enough, I work for a company that's already figured this stuff out, and they've done some cool things about wrapping that governance model around how how different teams, developers use AI technology. So if you look at the market and the industry today, all of these, let's say API gateway providers offer a flavor of something called an AI gateway.
Okay.
So the AI gateway, what it's there to do is same thing like an API gateway, right? You can police your API calls, you can authenticate them, you can rate limit, all the stuff that we've seen happen before us. Like AWS does this, even like Apogee has technologies that's been doing this for a long time. And a lot of those methodologies can be applied to AI because it is just another API call, right? What's different though is that they're thinking about the context of how they're calling these models and what actually happens in that transaction. So if I send out a prompt through ChatGPT is just a wrapper for a bunch of API calls out to OpenAI to say, "Hey, take this particular request, form it in such a way, and then return the value also in such a way that is friendly to the person that's prompting," right? It shouldn't just be a bunch of JSON blob like what we were seeing with Bedrock, right?
Right.
So I'll actually share some slides, and maybe we can get into a little bit of a terminal setup here. You know, what's interesting is okay, I cheated a little bit. I actually built these slides for a session I did in New York because I was in New York last week. I was there for KCD. I didn't even talk about this last week, surprisingly. KCD is a Kubernetes Community Days. It's an event that goes on like throughout the world, actually. So you see it happen quite often, and like they've had one in New York. They had one last year. They had one this year. I got to speak at both of them. Different topics. I spoke about Kubernetes reliability last year, and this year I decided to talk a little bit about AI Gateway. But they happen. I don't know if they're going to happen in like Pittsburgh, because they only have a few in the US, and then they have like other events throughout Canada. I mean, sorry, not Canada. What am I talking about? We don't even have one in Canada. They have other events throughout like the globe. So hey, Akansha, thanks for coming by. Anyways, great event, kind of like a DevOps Days vibe. So you've been to DevOps Days, right?
Yeah.
Is there DevOps Days happening in PA anytime soon? Do you know?
I assume there's going to be a DevOps Days Philly in the fall. Last year it was in the spring, but looks like it's going to be in the fall this year. And I don't think I've actually seen a notification for it yet, so who knows if that's actually happening, but I hope so. Oh, no, they did. September 30th is when they're doing DevOps Days in Philly.
All right.
Come on down.
I should try my best to try. It's not too far. I think we can drive it. I'm actually tempted to just like map this out and see. Let's see, maps. You can't see my screen yet. Let me share this tab. Toronto. Right, let's see Toronto. Sorry to sidebar here, but I'm now interested because it's so close that I'd probably want to do this. Okay, I'm not gonna take the train, but about an 8.5 hour drive.
Okay.
And if I were to fly, if I were to fly, how would that look? Non-stop. All right, I'd have to look into this, but I can figure that out later.
Yeah, you could go into Philly International and then just take the train from Philly International to where the DevOps Days is happening. I assume they're going to use the same location as last time. I didn't actually check that. Yeah, Science History Institute, which is, I don't know, maybe a 15-minute walk from one of the train stations. So yeah, it's not bad. So,
hey, Sebastian. Seb was out at Cisco Live.
Nice.
Feel free to tell us about Cisco Live. I'm a little jealous. I actually saw all the cool photos and everything. Anyways, yeah, where was I? Okay, so we had this concept of agents and MCP servers and developers all consuming models of sorts and doing things with models. And the one problem that developers kind of have is that they're not the ones thinking about the security patterns. They're not thinking about authentication. They're not thinking about how much tokens they're consuming, which translates to the credits that they consume. And so we need something to kind of solve that problem. So the AI gateway pattern is pretty much how you do that. You can implement like pluggable features that can rate limit you. So if you decide you're going to artificially rate limit a developer or an agent to say, this is how big your context window can be, how many tokens you can consume in a single prompt, that's one way to rate limit them. I mean, there's other ways too, like how many calls they can do per minute or per second. And this is from an egress standpoint. Normally, when we think about API gateways, they're going towards an API that you would normally own, that you have access to, you have control to.
Right. Normally, you'd be hosting the API internally, and you're putting the gateway on the outside, so people trying to get to your API, you can apply these controls. This is
Exactly.
the inverse to that, because you're trying to control someone's access to external services.
Exactly, right? I mean, you could just simply swap out OpenAI and it could be Bedrock. It could be AWS specifically, the AWS API. And you could even rate limit your developers and how much AWS cloud they consume if you wanted to. I don't think that's really the problem these days, because a lot of enterprises have figured out how to effectively and safely give their developers access to the cloud without them just consuming an enormous amount of cloud resources and blowing up their monthly budget or something.
Yeah. Typically, when I think of like controlling egress traffic, it's putting it through a proxy of some kind, like a Zscaler or something along those lines. But usually those settings are like, you're not allowed to go to this site. You are allowed to go to this site. And watching for traffic that's flowing through, make sure it's not someone copying all their data from local to like a Google Drive or something. But this is much more specific and detailed than that. You're really inspecting more about the request than simply what site it's going to and kind of what's in it.
Yeah, and to Sebby's point, this is very much the same kind of networking we're dealing with. I mean, he's right. It hasn't changed once in 20 years. I'm almost 37. So when I first started really looking into networking was 20 years ago. And, he's absolutely right. Like a packet is still a packet. IP is still IP. I mean, we still haven't really embraced IPv6.
That's misleading. We have,
but not it's surprising to me that a lot of the conversations that I still have today, no one talks about IPv6. I think people just know that they can get away with, having unlimited amounts of just, like, private CIDRs if they wanted to. And they wouldn't really have to think twice about having to like capacity plan anymore. I mean, unless we actually outlaw NAT, there's no chance that we're gonna see some mass adoption of v6. Maybe in the future we might.
Yeah,
it'll be like 5-10 years from now, and maybe, I don't know.
Certainly not for internal corporate environments. I think that's far less likely, especially if you're in a small medium business. The large enterprises that do a lot of M&A, they like IPv6 because they don't have to worry about overlapping IP address space that you'd have with v4. If everything's running v6, then you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. But for smaller businesses, like, IPv4 is still the default. I would not be surprised if home devices make the transition in the next like 5 to 10 years. Just because a lot of devices are actually using IPv6 in the background. You don't even realize it. I think like a lot of the Apple devices that use like Bonjour send out traffic on both stacks to see what responds to it. And they're using IPv6 for name resolution.
Yeah, a lot of major websites, I think even Netflix too, uses dual stack functionality as well, right?
But it means that your ISP also has to support IPv6 down to your router, which like I'm on Verizon Fios, and right now if I want IPv6, I have to upgrade to business because they still haven't rolled IPv6 out to residential, but allegedly it's coming. But it's been coming for like 2 years, so I'm not holding my breath on that one.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe if I logged into my router, I'd probably see that Bell's doing IPv6 too. They probably do. In fact, like, they do. What am I talking about? Because I think it was last year or the year before. I know we've like tangented off into like v6, but a couple of years ago, there was a guy from Bell who did a talk at CiliumCon. CiliumCon is just a colo event at KubeCon. And they were talking about how they use like segment-based routing or segment v6 or segment routing v6 to effectively build out and architect their telco networks. And it just, yeah, see, Seb's confirming this. Yeah. So it's not just for enterprise networks where they're doing like, they're handing out private networks to them or like leasing lines so that they can interlink sites, but also for home usage too. So absolutely, they're doing it here up in Canada. Just not like, I'm not going to go to what's my IP right now, Seb. Sorry. You're not going to know you're not going to try and hack into my network. I'm not very secure at home.
Very suspicious asking for that.
So,
yeah,
anyways.
I have both enabled on my home router because I manage my own router, and I still don't get an IPv6 address. It's sitting there. It's like, hey, I'll take one, and it doesn't get one from FiOS. So maybe someday.
I think, like, if you've got your own, do you like to have your own wireless network at home?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you have you should have the capability to be able to just turn on V6 if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I can run. In fact, I'm running IPv6 internally. It still has to do a translation to get the traffic out today. Whereas ideally, my ideal situation is that I'm IPv6 internally and I have IPv6 out to the worldwide internet, as it were. And then I can use IPv6 to connect to streaming services like Netflix and others, because you're going to have a better experience, basically. In part because those networks are less congested.
Yeah.
But also that's where things are. That's where things are getting the preference right now. If you can be on that, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's always the year of IPv6.
Always.
Just like it's always the year of the Linux desktop.
Actually, I feel like it's becoming more so the year of the Linux desktop, or maybe probably the Mac OS desktop. But anyways, we tangented quite a bit. All right, let me get back on track.
Pretty hard.
Okay, so we have this AI gateway pattern, and it's just processing traffic. But the thing is, like, we just don't have one developer and one agent and one provider out there. We kind of have something like this going on, where we have agents running in Kubernetes. We have developers that are building code with calls out to models. Like, they probably have a function block out there that's not fully programmed out, but just has a prompt that says, like we did with our Python script. Remember when we built out our transcript thing? So same thing, right? They're just calling out to a model to say, do X, Y, and Z and return a value for me to do something with. And that's what's going on. It's just that when you decide you have to do this at enterprise level scale, and then you want to be a little bit more intentional using an MCP server, and you're using tools like, I'll come back to that in a second. You're using tools like Insomnia or even Postman to be able to interact with your MCP servers. You kind of need some governance in between. You actually do need that governance. Enterprises want that governance. So in that governance model, like whether you're using, let's say, Kong, that's where I work, or another provider out there that does AI gateway technology, they have some sort of plugin layer where they can inject prompt cards where you can ask models certain things. But if you attempt to ask a model something that is in that deny list of that prompt card, it's like a firewall. It'll just say, sorry, no, you can't do that. Right. Or you might want to cache. So you might have like teams of developers that are running the same kind of query or prompt, and you don't want it to go all the way to the model. If you've got a similar prompt that's already went out previously, then return a cached response. And that's effectively what the gateways are there to do. They're just there to intercept, enforce, and just cut back on unnecessary costs and even latency too. So if you think about it, if every single call had to go out to a model, and a model is just overloaded because it just hasn't kicked up scale on the provider's end, then you're at that mercy of higher latency because the model's just not ready to respond or available to respond, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if you know the answer to this, but like when I think about caching responses, usually from like an HTML, HTTP standpoint, certain portions of the page will say no cache versus cache. So if someone requests the same page again, the portions of the page that can be cached will be returned from the cache, and the portions that won't will go back to origin, right?
Mhm.
Does AI have anything similar where it tags portions of its response as cacheable or non-cacheable?
I think that's entirely possible. I don't think maybe it's possible. I don't know if we've investigated that yet. And it really just comes down to when you take that entire prompt, right? It's broken up into, I think, what is the word? There's a word for it, like how it's tokenized,
Hmm.
and then each token is sent out. Some of that can probably be cached. So, like very standard words or very standard types of queries can be cached, but the actual topic or subject probably needs to go to a model. So you're not sending your entire query out. You're just probably shortening that prompt in such a way that only the necessary bits needs to go out. And like you said, some will go to origin while some will just, or some of that bit will like be cached and respond with cache.
Hmm.
But I don't know, like I don't know if we've been able to do that yet. I think it's possible that other providers or models are doing something like that at the moment. I think even models, a lot of like providers like OpenAI have started to do things like memory and caching inside of their own systems as well.
Hmm.
So if you're trying to also consider like that latency savings as well, it'll probably exist there. There's probably some fine tuning you have to do within the settings page of like an API, but short answer is probably possible.
Hmm.
I mean, if we've done it before, we're probably able to do it again. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, I mean, the other cool thing is thinking about situations where, let's say you run a large organization and you want to use a local model for a lot of your like common day-to-day tasks. Maybe you might be running a call center system, or you have a bunch of agents that are just looking up documentation and need a summary of how some features work. They can use a local model to process that information, whereas they don't need to go to OpenAI to get that info.
Right.
And if they do, well, okay, well, we won't use the local model, and that's where some of that advanced routing capability can be made possible by a lot of these gateway technologies. But I think I'm done with the slides. I don't want to show any more slides. I can show you some cool stuff.
Yeah, let's
Take a
see some
look
cool
at
stuff. I like cool stuff.
Yeah, let's take a little look at Kubernetes for a second.
All right.
So let me.
I really like the idea while you're bringing this up. I really like the idea behind being able to run some things locally, whether that's memory components or certain model components, and then only sending out requests that require the full model when necessary. So I love the idea of having a local model that can answer some queries. And then have it escalate to the bigger model if it can't handle that stuff locally. That would be really cool. And maybe that's like, not trying to give OpenAI business ideas, but that could be a really interesting use case for them to have a local model that intrinsically knows when to farm it out to the full model. So you can run one piece locally and one piece remotely.
That's kind of what we can, like Kong can do today with their. They have something called the AI Advanced Proxy plugin,
Okay.
and you can semantically say like these types of requests that are very easy, very straightforward, based off of a certain context or like certain criteria matching system. Go
Hmm.
local, right? Use the local models. Use models that might even exist on your device, and then everything else that can't be answered easily by a local model, send it out to the cloud, or maybe a higher intensity model that can process that or infer what's going on and
Yeah.
provide like just be a lot more intelligent. So
Neat.
okay,
Okay, what do you got
Kubernetes.
here? What's going on?
Kubernetes. Have you used K9s before?
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, really showing my age here. I still just use kubectl.
That's okay. That's okay. Me too. Like
Like a
K9s is
huge nerd. But yeah, this looks nice.
it's very cool. It's very nifty. You know what? I'll be honest. You have to be using it consistently to know all the shortcuts. And sometimes I'm like, I forgot the shortcut, so I have to go like look it up. But let me hold on. Let's see. Not CZ. So if you type in, you see that little doggy that's up there?
Yeah. Hey, puppy.
Right. So how I got there was I hit colon. So shift colon on your keyboard, and then I type
like getting into
pod.
command mode in VI.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I can see all the running pods in my system, and this is against all namespaces. If I did services, I can see all the services running across different namespaces. If I did config map, I can see all the different configs, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And it's really cool to be able to like just jump in. Like if I went back to a pod, and then if I wanted to, let's go to our Kong pod and see what's going on. Go to the proxy, I can see the logs. All I did was just like hover over it, highlight it, hit enter, and now I can see a bunch of things going on.
Okay.
I don't know what these errors are. I didn't even think about the failed to fetch SNI. I'm not here to troubleshoot that issue right now because I really don't want to. But what I wanted to highlight though is that the AI gateway that I'm running right now is a pod inside of this Kubernetes cluster.
Okay.
And this Kubernetes cluster is running in a cloud provider called Civo Cloud. Have you heard of Civo?
Yeah, they're European based, aren't they?
Yes, they're based in the UK, and they've got like regions in Frankfurt and London, and they're a really good smaller scale boutique cloud provider, and they've also pivoted towards doing a lot of AI stuff as well. I think they just recently opened up a data center or a cloud data center in India, and it's because like I imagine there's so much more demand out there because there's a lot of companies coming out in India as well that are very focused around AI, and they're starting to see a lot more consumption there as well.
Interesting.
Anyways,
we had,
I call it. Go ahead.
We had the CEO of Civo Cloud, Mark Boost.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We had him on Day 2 DevOps pretty recently. I don't know if that episode came out yet, but it's definitely recorded.
Okay. Okay.
So it's either out or it's going to come out very soon. So if people want to know more about Civo Cloud and specifically his opinions on like public cloud infrastructure, that'd be an interesting episode to listen to.
That is such a coincidence. Like here I am just talking about Civo. I know, right? Yeah, Mark is a pretty cool guy. They run a bunch of events called Civo Navigate, and they rotate across like different countries, and I think they've just done a few in the US and in the UK as well. Anyways, this Kubernetes cluster, it's running in Civo, so go check it out if you want to go mess around and get some free credits and stuff. Very easy to use actually. But I've got my data plane, my gateway data plane running here, and if you see here for a second, that Kong proxy, it's got a load balancer service. So what would happen is I'd send my AI traffic to this IP, right? And then from this IP, I basically like the data plane will intercept it, and we'll process whatever needs to go on. We'll apply like the necessary policies and just govern the traffic and then shoot it off to the model. So all it's doing is it's just infrastructure hosting my data plane. Nothing special about it. But if I can show you something else though, let's take a look at this other little tool. I don't know if I've shown this one before. This one might be cool. to y'all. How does that look on screen? Is it too small, or
You could probably bump it up one.
how does that look?
That's good.
All right, let me just shift this over here. So if you've ever used Postman before, Postman is just an API client that you can make REST calls with and just like model how your APIs work. And this is exactly the same system. It's called Insomnia, and it's, if you want to go like download it, insomnia.rest. Interesting name, interesting domain name.
Yeah.
But what I've done is I've gone ahead and I'm just going to clear my responses here. What I've done is I've gone ahead and I've pre-programmed my AI gateway. So I can even show you that in a bit, but I pre-programmed my AI gateway that when I send a request, if you remember, that IP that I used is going to port 80, and I've also got a path here. So when I hit that route, it's going to load balance between OpenAI and Gemini.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, I've even got a Gemini API key set up. It's not actually set up here. It's set up at the gateway level. So even if you went to auth, you don't see anything. The only thing you see is in my body, my query. So right now I can ask it anything. If you want, give me a question. I'll ask it something.
How do I make a creme brulee?
All right, let's do that.
Can you tell I'm hungry? I'm wearing donuts, thinking about creme brulee. I can't help
make a creme brulee. I hope I spelled that right.
I want to know how a coding expert tells me how to make a creme brulee. It's probably going to be very procedural.
Okay, creme brulee in a nutshell. Infuse and temper, gently heat heavy cream with vanilla, pod or extract, whisk egg yolks and sugar separately. This is very, very programmatically developed. And it's funny because it gives you the instructions. It's you like, here, serve immediately. Like, that is just amazing. But okay, so let's take a look, right? So I went to Gemini first, and I'm gonna send the request again, and let's see where it goes now. And it went to O4 Mini.
Okay.
So O4 Mini is just one of the other models. Actually, if you go into any one of those providers like Gemini, OpenAI, Bedrock, they list, remember we were looking up the models and the model names?
Yeah.
As long as you have the actual model name itself, and if you actually program that in your gateway configuration, it just knows, like by default, okay, this is the model I need to choose, and it'll just return that back as a value, telling you, hey, this is how I did it. Let's look up something else. Briefly explain pointers in C#, because I don't know pointers that well. We'll see who's faster. This is important too. Like when you think about how long that request takes to come back to us, it's because it's generating the text, and wow, it was pretty interesting. C# pointers are variables that store the memory address of another variable or object. It was not brief at all. It was Gemini that gives.
Brief is relative, right?
It is very relative. If you notice here, I also have a few other calls as well. Like, okay, sanitization is not going to work. I'll tell you why. Because when I ran this previously, I actually had this PII sanitizer working on my system, not on this system that I'm on now. It was on another system, so it was just running as a process effectively. Okay. And the reason why was because at the time I wasn't able to containerize it. There's a long story behind it, which, short story is that like they just didn't make a multi-arc image at the time. So they only had an x86. I'm running an ARM-based system. I couldn't run the container. So it just kept failing. And I just didn't have enough time to recompile it into ARM. But what it would have done is if I send out info, it would just jumble my name. And it's just another plugin. But I want to also point out the configuration. So I actually want to pull up another window here.
Okay.
So you can see something. Can I pull this up? Let's see. I'm gonna log into my Connect environment. All right, so the one thing is I don't pass configurations right to the data plane. I've got to configure it elsewhere. So if I wanted to do all of my plugin configurations, I could deploy a control plane locally to, let's say, Kubernetes, use an operator of sorts to manage that instance as well. But a lot of enterprises just start using a lot of SaaS these days, and they just rather have someone else host it for them, and they just like maybe partially have to worry about the infrastructure concerns. There's this thing that we built out recently called AI Manager, and this is the one I think this was the one I was messing with. Yeah, this was the one I was messing with.
Okay.
So this is nifty because previously, in order for us to set up plugins, I'd have to actually go into the gateway and set up the plugin, but I'll show you what that plugin looks like. But if you notice, right, that was that same gateway we were hitting, and let's see if the service is here. Yeah, here's that service. That was the data plane that we were just using. So the one that was running in Sivo, this one isn't hosted here in Connect. It's just connecting back to Connect to say, hey, give me your config. We'll run things and take care of it for you. I've got one plugin configured because I didn't bother to configure any others. And I feel scared right now because I realized that I didn't hide the API keys. So I'm probably going to have to delete them later on, but that's totally fine. It's okay. If you notice something here, right? You see how I have targets? I have one target here and another target here. And if you look, one of the targets is O4 Mini, while the other target is Gemini. Right now, what's going on is it's just load balancing between the two because of that weight situation.
Is the weight the same?
Yeah.
It's
okay, the exact same
equivalent weights.
Yeah. So if I wanted to, sorry, go ahead.
Does it? I was going to say, does it default to round robin? And then yes, it does.
It does. It does round robin right now, and I can change that to something else like that does least used or least frequently used, I think. And there's a few others as well. But if I wanted to, like, let's just say we wanted to add in Bedrock as another model. Let's see, load balancing. Let's add a target. Let's add Bedrock. Let's add a specific model. Anthropic. See if I can find these credentials because I don't know where I put them. Okay, I gotta go find my. This is fun. Okay, here we go. Don't ask me why I'm using this region. I just borrowed something from one of the developers because I was doing some testing and I never bothered to go set up my own. Actually, my access key ID and secret access key aren't working for this, but that's totally fine. Okay, so if we went back now to my Insomnia, let's open up Insomnia right now.
So in effect, you've added a third destination on the same load balancer.
Exactly. So when I hit this route, it should go to either one of these. And I'll be very quick, super brief, explain what, I don't know, give me something, explain something. What do you want me to explain?
Oh, geez. What Sprite is made of?
explain what we're gonna ask a coding expert. Sprite is made of. Okay. All right, let's see what happens.
Lemon, lime, and the tears of my enemies.
A sprite is a 2D graphic used in video games.
Maybe
Okay,
I should be more specific.
But okay, so it actually did go to Bedrock because that's the Bedrock model that we picked. If I run this again, let's see.
Should just round robin it, right? In theory.
Yeah.
I'm curious how each model will interpret the word sprite without the context. Same way.
Yeah.
And where's this coming from? 04 Mini. Okay.
04 Mini. All right, let's see what Gemini says. Assuming it goes to Gemini. Oh, it did go to Gemini. Okay. All of them it's because of this, right? You are coding.
That's so true. Yeah. If we change the context to you are a nutritional or a beverage expert. There you go.
Nutritional beverage expert. Okay, let's see. There we go.
Yeah, it totally changes the response because we told it it's a different kind of expert. So
well, there are the ingredients.
Oh, that sounds right.
Let's try this.
I don't think Sprite has caffeine in it, though. I think it just lied to us.
I can go back and look at that response.
As someone who used to be a friend of many a straight edge kid, they would drink Sprite because it didn't have caffeine.
What if you were lied to and it actually did have caffeine and the model's telling us something we just shouldn't know?
Well, now I have to find out. Does Sprite Sprite ingredient. Keep doing your demo. I'm gonna find out on the side.
Okay, so 04 Mini didn't mention anything about caffeine. Anthropic did for some reason. I don't know why. And let's see what Gemini says, if Gemini gets it.
Confirmed, it is caffeine free.
Okay, so Anthropic is totally lying to us.
No. Which one lied to us? Anthropic?
Anthropic lied to us.
You don't know what's in Sprite, Anthropic.
And that's funny because Anthropic, they're the makers of Claude, right?
Yes. Claude is the makers of. Anthropic makes Claude. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Words. We're good at this.
Yeah, I would not expect them to be beverage experts whatsoever.
Not with that attitude.
All right, but that was something kind of neat and cool. But I also wanted to point out one more thing, right? Like if you look at the requests that I made, so I did 3 of them. If you notice, the one that responded very quickly was the Anthropic one. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you look, Anthropic it took what, 4 seconds for this one? No. It took 4.2 seconds for a round trip response. This one took a little bit longer because I guess, I don't know, 04 Mini. The problem is 04 Mini does a lot of thinking. So it has to really think about what you're asking. It's not like 4.0, which is boom, answers out there. Whereas 04 Mini is critically thinking about whether or not it's right. So it has to go back and validate it itself. And then you've got what was the other one? The last one we did? Gemini. Because I used Flash. Flash is pretty quick. So it came back rather quickly. But when you look at this data though, as a developer, someone that's building out things, they're going to know how quickly a model is going to respond and whether that's the right model for their needs based off of the accuracy of the response and then that latency as well. Because I think latency and accuracy of response are probably 2 critical bits when you're building out code too, or when you're vibe coding, if you will. But that's all I have to show. I don't have anything else. I mean,
is it possible to change the load balancing to send the request to all of them instead of sending it to just one?
I don't think we have that capability now.
it'd be interesting to just blast it out to all three as part of a testing suite.
So I think what
you go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, well, I think the way you'd have to handle that is you'd have to file 3 separate requests at the same time.
That's true.
Which are the exact same, like with the exact same context, query, and they just have to have different routes going to it. And that would just mean I need 3 clients to be able to run that, which I don't think I can do today, but yeah, that's something that I think would be really good when you're doing some regression testing of sorts, or some scale testing or performance testing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you could. Well, what you were showing is it's really easy to switch out the model that's actually being used behind each of these load balancers. So once you do your testing, and like when they roll out a new model edition, you could do some A/B testing with it and see which model is giving better responses while people are still using the same endpoint, and then move everybody over to the new endpoint once you feel confident about it.
That's exactly it, right? I think for a lot of enterprises thinking about how they want to adopt and onboard AI in a very safer manner, and also same time like really provide some enterprise standards to different teams that want to consume it. You're just offloading a lot of that work to an ops team that sits behind the scenes and decides, hey, I will have some infrastructure that hosts a couple of models, that maybe takes care of 75% of our requests because they're very common or very easy to process locally. But when we want some cutting edge stuff, then we can use this governance model to just send out requests out to a model as well. There's like a whole bunch of things I didn't talk about, like how do we handle the authentication piece? How do we handle rate limiting? And it just takes a lot to configure. Like when you're thinking about rate limiting too, you also have to set up classes of consumers, because even in regular rate limiting, you think about free tier users versus paid users, right? Docker, classic example, where you get like, I don't know how many container pulls per day, a certain number, and then if you're on a paid tier, it's like, oh, I guess unlimited or something to that effect. But yeah, a lot of cool things you can do with this. If the audience has questions, I'm not going to answer them right now because we have a few more minutes left, but feel free to reach out. Any thoughts, man?
I like, this is very interesting to me, and in the sense that it's a proxy out to these different AI models. And if you want to control consumption, which models are available, and you also want to control which model each endpoint is currently using, you can do all of that programmatically through this gateway. You don't have to necessarily change it out in your actual application. And that's kind of cool. It's sort of like what Amazon Bedrock can do when you're programming, and you can say, I want to use this model instead of this model, or I want to use like 3 models at the same time and compare their responses. But if you don't want to use Bedrock, you could just use this and still have like multiple models available to you and swap them out whenever you need to without actually altering your application at all.
Yeah, that's the other piece I didn't really talk much about. Let me just quickly see if I've got a Python service here. How do I quit this thing? Damn it. Oh yeah, Control C. Or Command C. Oh damn, I can't exit. Oh, maybe quit. There we go. So okay, I don't have anything here. That's fine. Maybe another time. So when you have, let's say, a Python application and you are calling a model, let's say you remember we were looking much earlier on how we can call the OpenAI client from within Python. I don't know if we ever looked at that.
So that does sound familiar. Yeah.
So there's an option inside of that client where you actually can specify a base URL. That base URL just simply points to the gateway. So you could potentially tell developers, sure, continue using the OpenAI client in your Python script or your Python application or whatever you're building, right? You're just using the SDK at this point. Just swap out the base URL. So now it doesn't directly go to, you're like overriding what that connection is going to happen or where it's actually supposed to be going. You're now just specifying the gateway, which is now intercepting that traffic versus going direct to a model, which is usually just a simple one-line change. I'm trying to see if I can find a script quickly that I can show, but I don't think I can because I don't think I have enough time, but maybe next time. And actually, next week, we're going to take a week off because I think it's a long week. Is it a long weekend? I know you're off. You're doing some stuff.
Well, I'm going to be in Orlando on vacation, so that's why I won't be here.
Yeah, and I can't because I've got a team meeting that overlaps this time. But I think the day before is supposed to be Juneteenth, so I think a lot of people will be off anyways. So good time to take a break. And the following week, so remember that stuff you were talking about around like on-device model switching and whatnot? I think we were talking about this much earlier on today. There's a company that's been doing some edge-based AI stuff, and I'm talking about like on the phone kind of deal. There's my dog. He passed away a while ago. Sorry, but they have on-device edge-related technology, and we're going to bring them on, and they're just going to tell us a little bit about how this is working. And they've open sourced something to the PyTorch Foundation. So it'd be really cool to kind of hear a little bit about that. But I'll announce it in a couple of weeks, and we'll see them come join us and show us some cool stuff.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Ned, thank you for hanging out. And
thanks, Marino.
No worries. Have a great weekend, and happy Father's Day to you and everyone else out here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.